First things first, let's address the elephant in the room, Diddy's current situation. Y'all, it's bad. Like worse than that time I tried to cut my own bangs, bad.
One former warden who worked at the facility says Combs's life could still be in danger there. And that former warden is Cameron Lindsay, and she joins me now. Cameron, great to have you here. We just read it out loud. One lawyer for one inmate called the MDC overcrowded and understaffed, hell on earth. Combs's own lawyers called it horrific. Why are conditions so bad there?
Can you believe it? Our boy Diddy, who's been living it up in mansions and yachts, is now reportedly crying out in pain and begging for drugs. It's giving serious withdrawal vibes, and honey, that's no joke. But let's be real, given Diddy's history, should we really be surprised? I mean, going from popping bottles to popping nothing must be a real shock to the system. Now, some folks are out here saying this is karma catching up with Diddy, but let me tell you, besties, it looks like things could get even worse for him. Yikes.
Well, it's been 1 week since the arrest of Sean Diddy Combs on federal charges, and living behind bars is the exact opposite of what he has been used to. The Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn is a place that's been described as hell on earth.
MDC is so bad, federal judges have questioned the harsh conditions for those here awaiting trial. So bad, I was here 2 years ago during a cold spell, reporting on detainees with no heat, pounding on windows for help. There was even a congressional inquiry. But take the word of a former inmate I spoke with who goes by Esco.
It's terrible. The food is terrible. Of course, the inmates are terrible. The guards are terrible. The conditions are terrible. It's just terrible.
Oh, baby, when I tell you it's been a wild and messy week for Diddy, I mean wild. This man has gone from throwing the kind of parties we all dream about to being locked up in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Talk about a plot twist. And the charges. Honey, they're more serious than my commitment to finding the perfect winged eyeliner. We're talking sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, forced labor, and even transportation for prostitution. It's like a legal buffet, and Diddy's been served a full plate. Now get this. Diddy's out here pleading not guilty to all these accusations. But here's the real kicker. His legal team tried to throw down a $50 million bail package. Yes, you heard that right, $50 million. They even had his family ready to co-sign, promising travel restrictions and a GPS monitor. But guess what? The judge wasn't having any of it. Denied not once, but twice. That's got a sting.
News to tell you about on the sex trafficking and racketeering federal charges against Sean Diddy Combs. A second judge within the hour has denied his plea to be released on bail. Combs is accused of abusing women for years, and he's going to stay in jail, apparently, after this ruling. Eyewitness News reporter Darla Miles live at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan with the breaking news. Darla.
Bill, Diddy's attorneys went before a different judge today in a different courtroom, hoping for a different ruling and hoping that Diddy would be able to leave this courtroom today, this courthouse today, on a $50 million bond. But that did not work out as planned after federal prosecutors tipped the hand on their case and provided more details. The judge, again, for a second time, said no. For a second straight day inside of a federal courthouse, prosecutors and defense attorneys for Sean Diddy Combs spending hours going back and forth about releasing him on bail. Today's argument centering on two issues: risk of flight and witness tampering. Federal prosecutors telling the court victims and witnesses have universally expressed their extreme fear of the 54-year-old hip-hop icon. One woman describing her reaction to the civil suit filed by Cassie Ventura.
Now, let me paint you a picture of where Diddy's staying, because trust me, it ain't the Ritz-Carlton. The Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn is being described as hell on earth. Former inmates and legal experts are spilling the tea, and it's scalding hot. We're talking overcrowding, violence, not enough food, and missing basic necessities. It's like the worst summer camp ever, but you can't call your parents to pick you up. Can you imagine Diddy, who's been living that bougie, top-tier lifestyle for years, suddenly thrown into this mess? Talk about a fall from grace.
Disgraced music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, once known for his lavish lifestyle and living large in his multi-million-dollar mansions, has a new home as he awaits trial in his federal sex trafficking case. Last week, the Bad Boy Founder's defense team unsuccessfully fought to keep the music producer out of federal jail after his arrest. Now his new digs once housed other high-profile inmates, including R. Kelly, Fetty Wap, Sam Bankman-Fried, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Diddy is currently housed at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York, a stark difference from the glitz, glamour, and wealth in Hollywood and Star Island in Miami Beach, Florida. But MDC Brooklyn has been described as hell on earth, with horrifying conditions. The facility, which now houses Diddy, opened in the early 90s and is the only federal jail in New York City after the Bureau of Prisons closed its Metropolitan Correctional Center in 2021 after many issues came to light in the wake of Jeffrey Epstein's suicide just 2 years earlier.
But wait, it gets even juicier. They've got Diddy stashed away in the Special Housing Unit, aka the SU, and he's on suicide watch because of his high-profile status. No more penthouse suites for this bad boy. Now he's getting a hard dose of what real prison life looks like. The SHU is set up for inmates who need protection, like celebs or folks who might be at risk. So Diddy's in extreme isolation. No mixing with other prisoners, no fancy treatment, just the basics, if that. Honey, this ain't no VIP status he's used to.
Diddy's attorney argued in legal paperwork MDC Brooklyn is not fit for pretrial detention, citing detainee deaths and other concerns. His attorney Mark Agnifilo asked the judge for Diddy to be moved to a New Jersey jail, but the judge says it's up to the Bureau of Prisons to decide. And while Diddy is being housed in a special housing unit, also known as the SHU, officials say he's not receiving any special treatment, but are closely monitoring him as he's been placed on procedural suicide watch in case the disgraced producer attempts to harm himself. But his attorney says his client is not at all suicidal, saying the mogul is strong, healthy, confident, and focused on his defense.
Now, let's spill some tea about life in the SHU, because it's a far cry from the lavish lifestyle Diddy's used to. Inmates are locked up tight for 23 hours a day, only stepping out for quick bites and a little fresh air. And don't even get me started on the food. It's infamous for being straight up trash. Former inmates have gone on record saying it's practically inedible. But here's the real gag. Word on the street is that Diddy ain't even touching his meals. Apparently, he's worried someone might be trying to slip a little something extra into his plate, if you know what I mean. Can you believe it? From private chefs to prison slop, he won't even eat. Talk about a lifestyle change.
His attorneys are saying that the conditions there at MDC are horrific, horrendous. They're not appropriate to stay in. What is your experience there? Is it really as horrendous as they're saying?
I've had many clients who were housed in MDC Brooklyn, and I can tell you the reports that the facility is something that is less than desirable is 100% accurate. There's been a lot of reports of it being below standard in terms of prison standards, and of course, a prison isn't meant to be a comfortable place, but of course, they have to provide the basic human rights to their inmates. And MDC Brooklyn has been plagued with overcrowding, with violence, with poor food, with poor cleanliness. And P. Diddy, who is in a protective custody unit, is still experiencing all the bad things that MDC Brooklyn has to offer. And it doesn't have a lot to offer in terms of comfort or things that an inmate would be looking for.
And besties, the isolation in the SHU is a whole different level of torture. High-profile folks like Diddy are under that all-seeing eye 24/7, rocking those tear-away paper outfits and rubber shower shoes. It's all about keeping them from doing any harm to themselves. Don't even get me started on the sleeping situation. No fancy memory foam pillows here, just a hard bed and a flimsy blanket that probably feels like sandpaper. And forget about scrolling through Instagram before bed. Electronic devices are a big no-no in this life. The only little luxury might be a radio for a hot minute, but that's it. Talk about a downgrade from mansions and private jets.
And certainly, Diddy would be facing potential dangers because a prison, by virtue of it being a prison, is not necessarily a good place to be. It's not a safe place to be, but particularly this facility is known to have a lot of problems in the last few years.
What would it look like for Diddy in this protective care unit, I guess? He's separated from general population, but what is his day-to-day like?
So Diddy's life in the SHU, in that specialized housing unit where he's been placed for his own safety, is going to be something that's rather routine and mundane. He's not going to be necessarily even enjoying some of the things that general population, aka Gen Pop, enjoys, because he's being in a special segregated unit for his own safety, which means he's going to be under more constant observation by guards. His comings and goings in and out of his cell for recreational time and for mealtime are going to be more scrutinized. So although the SHU unit is technically for the prison inmate's safety, and of course Diddy being a high-profile inmate requires that, it also means more restrictions for that inmate.
Now let's talk about how being locked up in MDC Brooklyn is throwing some serious roadblocks in Diddy's legal game. He's got to deal with communication restrictions with his lawyers that only happen at certain times, and every single convo is under tight watch. Can you imagine trying to plan your defense under those conditions? It's like trying to apply false lashes in a moving car, nearly impossible. And get this tea, honey, there's no special treatment for our celebrity defendants. This means Diddy's got to rub elbows with other inmates in those same communal spots, just like everyone else. Federal trial attorney Philip Hamilton spills the tea that this lack of privacy and the rough conditions make it a real struggle to get a solid defense together. It's like trying to film a TikTok in a crowded mall. Good luck with that.
Diddy has pleaded not guilty to these charges, so of course we're expecting him to bring a strong defense with his attorneys, his team. Obviously they're going to be preparing, but does it add a layer of challenge, the fact that Diddy is behind bars? What does it look like for attorneys hoping to meet with him? Would they have their own rooms? Would they talk over those phone things we see in movies? What would it really look like?
So when you have a client who is behind bars, you are meeting with them on legal visits, and you are talking to them on a secured line, which is an attorney or legal call where it's not being recorded, and it's afforded that privilege, that attorney-client privilege, that privacy there. But it does present hurdles when having a client behind bars, because you're sort of really reliant on A, the prison schedule, B, the prison calls. You can't call your client, they're calling you. So even if you have something that you need to talk to your client about urgently, you gotta wait until you get that prison call from prison, or you're making that visit yourself to jail to have a legal visit.
And let's not even talk about the Wi-Fi situation over at MDC Brooklyn. It's a hot mess. With Diddy's case throwing around tons of digital evidence, we're talking hundreds of terabytes per the prosecutors. It's a serious game changer. Without the right access to all that data, building a strong defense is going to be a tall order. It's like trying to contour without a mirror. You're just hoping for the best at that point.
Abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. Exactly what you had just said. Some of these actions allegedly, they go back to 2009.
Well, and a lot, which hurts him, because there's a lot of witnesses, a lot of history, a lot of communications that probably the government has already accessed to support the allegations. But again, a lot of this also came out from lawsuits that were filed by women against P. Diddy. Right. And those lawsuits laid out a lot of this, what's in the indictment against P. Diddy. And these are people that are going to serve as witnesses when this goes to trial.
Okay, so let's just say you are his lawyer.
Right.
What's his defense?
His defense here is that the government has no business going into the private affairs of what happens in someone's bedroom. That these acts were entirely consensual. That these witnesses, really a lot of them, wanted to be in P. Diddy's circle of celebrity. They, what you have here are some of these people that have sued him, engaged in nothing more than a money grab.
Now, baby, the charges against Diddy are no joke. They're laying out a seriously disturbing narrative about his alleged shenanigans. The federal indictment is coming in hot, accusing Diddy of running a whole criminal enterprise that's neck deep in sex trafficking. We're talking serious charges here: labor trafficking, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and even obstruction of justice. It paints a disturbing picture of a pattern of abuse, especially targeting women, with all kinds of verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual violence. It's like a horror movie, but make it real life.
That used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice. Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB. which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse.
But hold on to your seats because it gets wilder. One jaw-dropping allegation suggests he was throwing elaborate sex parties, and guess what? He was allegedly recording everything without the participants' consent. And if that's not enough to make your jaw drop, federal authorities found a staggering 1,000 bottles of lubricant during raids on his properties. Honey, the tea is piping hot and it's spilling everywhere. Oh, it's just the tip of the iceberg, darling. Diddy's legal saga is only just kicking off, and trust me, it's shaping up to be a long and bumpy ride. His next court date is set for October 9th, but with all these twists and turns in his case, we could be looking at years before we see any kind of final verdict. In the meantime, he's stuck in MDC, Brooklyn, dealing with the brutal realities of prison life. Talk about a wake-up call. And let's not forget criminal defense attorney Imran Ansari, who's got quite the resume representing other high-profile defendants. This drama is just getting started, and you know we'll be keeping our eyes peeled for every juicy detail that comes out. Harvey Weinstein and 50 Cent are really bringing attention to the wild psychological toll that comes with flipping from glitzy mansions and red carpets to the harsh realities of a cramped cell. It's like a mental roller coaster, and that stress just piles on, making everything even harder.
Hey, Sylvia. Hey, Terrence. Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's just get right to it. How's Diddy reacting to everything that's going on right now? What have you guys heard?
Well, his attorney says he's in good spirits, but let's be honest here. Diddy's life is on the line. I mean, you were talking about incredibly serious federal charges, one of them being sex trafficking that could quite literally carry a life sentence in prison. So, well, again, while his attorney says Diddy is happy to be in this position because it's going to afford him the opportunity to, they say, to clear his name, he is sitting in a jail cell right now. He could be sitting in a jail cell for the foreseeable future, and like we just said, could be facing decades or more in prison if ultimately convicted. The attorney says that he's an imperfect person like we all are, but that he's not a criminal, that he's not a violent person, and that he will prove his innocence ultimately in this courtroom.
Yeah, this is all over social media right
now. Speaking of tough times, MDC Brooklyn ain't new to housing high-profile inmates. You've got folks like R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Sam Bankman-Fried all calling this place home for a while. It's definitely not just your average jail. This place has seen some serious drama. Larry Levine, a former inmate and the mastermind behind Wall Street Prison Consultants, spills the tea on what they might be going through. He paints the SHU as a dark pit of loneliness and desperation, where inmates often find themselves on psych meds just to get through the brutal reality. Going from lavish mansions and red carpets to a cramped cell is not just a shock, it's a total mind warp, stripping them of all those little luxuries they once took for granted.
MDC is no stranger to high-profile inmates. Previously housing R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Sam Bankman-Fried, who's actually there right now. Bankman-Fried was convicted of fraud and money laundering last November after the collapse of his cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. And as it happens, Bankman-Fried and Diddy are being housed in the same part of MDC, a unit for inmates that requires special protection. That's people like Diddy or Bankman-Fried who are high-profile names, but it also cares for inmates who may need protection as they assist with ongoing investigations in open cases. Since Diddy's move to this area of MDC, there are reports that he's spoken briefly to his children over the phone. Diddy has 7 children, ranging in age from 33 to 23 months old. According to reports, Diddy is concerned about how his kids are handling his arrest and detainment. And meanwhile, they're allegedly in a state of crisis after only experiencing Diddy as a loving, devoted father.
The spotlight is blazing on Diddy's legal drama, with the public and media glued to every twist and turn. TMZ is all over this story, spilling the tea on both the courtroom battles and the emotional roller coaster behind the scenes. Legal experts are saying the evidence stacked against Diddy is no joke, and that all-female prosecution team is ready to throw down hard. Michael Babcock from TMZ emphasizes that while Diddy's lawyer is chirping about him being in high spirits and geared up to tackle these charges, we all know he's facing some serious heat. The situation is looking rough, besties.
It's also at MDC Los Angeles. It's like a cookie cutter of the MDC in New York. So yeah, I do know. But he's sitting in the shoe. He's in the hole. And this guy is going through loneliness, anxiety, desperation. He's on suicide watch. And They hand out like psych meds, like they're M&Ms to these inmates to try to get them to cope with what's going on. So his entire existence is to sit in this little cell, essentially. He can shower 3 times a week. He's not getting any real visits. If his lawyer does a legal visit, they have to come upstairs into the special housing unit to see him. Now, have you seen these reports about all these commissary items they say that he could buy? Any of those?
What was one of them? Steak or something?
Ribeye, steak,
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of nonsense. He's in the shoe, people. He's in a special housing unit. He cannot buy things off the regular commissary list.
So this is rocking his world right
He
now.
can buy a radio.
Yeah, this is rocking his world right now.
A life sentence is hanging over Diddy like a dark cloud, and even if he pulls off a miracle and clears his name, it's going to be a long, hard road ahead. This fall from grace is a stark reminder of how quickly life can flip from wild parties and plush mansions to facing the walls of one of the most infamous jails in the country. Ain't that something, honey? Diddy's current mess is a world away from the glamorous life he once flaunted. It's like going from the Met Gala to a prison jumpsuit in the blink of an eye.
Accused sex trafficker Sean Diddy Combs spent the weekend here behind bars in solitary confinement and on suicide watch. MDC is a tough place, so rough you can hear detainees shouting even on the streets. There are constant lockdowns due to violent outbreaks, but former detainees I spoke with tell me that the experience here for Diddy will be different. Like other first-time celebrity defendants, he's reportedly under suicide watch, basically naked except for hospital paper, throwaway clothing, and rubber shower shoes. He's under 24-hour watch and kept separate from all other inmates. He has a bed with a blanket and no pillow. There are no electronic devices, but if he's lucky, he'll have the use of a radio for a short time. After being denied bail twice by 2 federal judges, he's expected to stay here until his trial, and this could limit his ability to prepare his defense. Many criminal defense attorneys say he's fighting a mountain of evidence and tough prosecution from the government's all-female team. I spoke with federal trial attorney Philip Hamilton, and he tells me when a defendant is behind bars at MDC, it's much more difficult to work on their defense no matter who they are.
As he tries to find his way through this legal jungle and face the cold, hard truth of it all, his story is a cautionary tale about the fallout from alleged criminal activity and how fickle fame and fortune can be. It's like watching a real-life episode of How the Mighty Have Fallen, and honey, it's not pretty. Well, there you have it, besties. The Diddy drama in all its messy glory. From mansion parties to prison cells, from red carpets to rubber shower shoes, it's a wild ride, and we're all just watching from the sidelines. Will Diddy bounce back? Will justice be served? Only time will tell. Remember, folks, this is all still unfolding, and we've got to wait for the legal process to play out. But you can bet your bottom dollar that as soon as there's any new tea to spill, I'll be right here, kettle in hand, ready to serve it piping hot. Until next time, stay fabulous, stay curious, and remember, in the world of celebrity drama, the truth is often stranger than fiction. Bye.